All right, we'll get started now. Let me bring up the presentation. I assume everybody can see that, right? That's perfect. Okay, so we'll get started. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the student government and how it functions and stuff like that, and we'll try to keep it within our time because we are on a tight schedule. So basically the USG functions through the Constitution and the bylaws, and you can access those bylaws and the Constitution online on our website. And the main goal of the USG is to represent the interests of the student body. The things that we do is we allocate activities trust fund, and promote student activities and involvement on campus. We are made up like the executive branch, which is the president and the vice president and the cabinet, the legislative, which is you senators, me and Ramla, the speaker and vice speaker, and the judicial, which is the associate justice and the chief justice, which is John. It's basically like the federal government, but like, of course, the roles are very different. So here's your representatives. The executive branch is made up of John Ray, Javier, and Jelly Pereira. Sorry, I'm so used to saying John Ray and Jelly, but they are your president and vice president. And of course, you have your student trustee, Krish Patel. They will speak later about what they've been doing throughout the summer because they've been doing a lot. But continuing on. Here is the Senate, and the Senate is made up of me, who heads the Senate, and Ramla. So we work together and we coordinate and we basically lead you, and we're basically here for you senators. I would be your primary contact for anything USG related and answering questions, stuff like that. But one of the things that is really important regarding this session is you are going to watch presentations on the committees and then choose a committee through that. And there are 3 committees. There's Budget and Finance, which is headed by Jake. There is Student Events and Organizations, which is headed by Laura. And there is also Campus and Community Affairs, which is headed by Isabella. Budget and Finance is usually like very money-based, and they basically allocate the Student Activities Trust Fund. Student Events and Organizations works closely with campus groups or campus organizations, and registration and stuff like that. And Campus and Community Affairs is basically the interface between USG and the student body. When campus was in person, they did like a lot of tabling and stuff like that. So these are your chairs. You have Jake, who is the Budget and Finance chair. You have Laura, who is the Student Events and Organization chair, and you have Isabella, who is Campus Community and Affairs. They will be giving presentations tomorrow regarding the committees, and you will choose your committee through that. So there's also the judicial branch, and you have here the Chief Justice John Patrick Moylan and the Associate Justice Angie. Basically, the judicial branch is responsible for making sure everything we're doing is basically legal according to the Constitution and the bylaws, and they usually upload voting records to the website, which you can access. You can access the voting records from past USGs, stuff like that, and record keeping is their main job. So what do senators do? This is really important, and because I know a lot of senators coming in don't really know what the job entails and stuff like that, which is why we have these resources for you. Your main job is to interact with your constituents because you are basically a student representative, and you need to talk to them, decide what issues you should focus on, and bring those issues forward through your committee. There's a process, of course, because it's like basically a mini government, but your main job is to interact with the student body, because as being in USG, you are representatives of the constituents. Make sure you talk to your chair based on the committee you choose, and interact with me, your speaker, if you have any questions, stuff like that, and play an active role in your committee or any cabinet positions. One thing to know about cabinet positions is they will be introduced, but to have a cabinet positions, you would have to give up your Senate seat. So the second main thing that senators should probably focus on, besides like committee work, is legislation. And legislation is something you should be highly skilled in doing, and you should talk to the student body and figure out how to place certain concerns and a legislation that addresses it, because if it get passes and stuff like that, those are like avenues for change. And then there's also many resources for you. You can access past voting records, bylaws, and constitution on umbgov.com. Follow our Instagram too. And of course, you can always come to any of us. You can come to me, your speaker. You can go to Ramla, your vice speaker. You can go to chair. If you don't feel comfortable speaking to any of us, there's a ton of people you can talk to. So now we are going to transition into meet your steering part. This makes me happy. We were right on schedule. So what we're going to do is all the steering committee will basically introduce themselves. So I am Fern Khan. I'm the speaker, and just to give like a career summary, basically in USG, I joined USG spring semester my freshman year. I went into campus and community affairs, and then I ran for speaker. So now I'm here. So I will transition it next to Vice Speaker Haji.
Hello, my name is Ramla. This is my second year as Vice Speaker, and my role pretty much sums up as recording the USG meetings and like writing down the meeting minutes, and basically distributing that communication to other members of what happened during the meeting, and just fulfilling any other duties under this speaker. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And now we'll go to Trustee Patel.
Hey everyone, so this is my fourth year in student government and my second year as student trustee. I started off our freshman year as a senator, just like all of you. I started off in the SCOC committee. Then in my second year, I was the SCOC chair. And then last year and then this year served as the student trustee. And as well, on top of that, I've also served on the Board of Higher Education. My sophomore year, I served as the voting student member for the Board of Higher Education. And these past 2 years, I've also served as just the UMass segmental advisor to the board.
Thank you. And now we'll go to President Javier.
Hey everyone, again, my name is John Ray. I am the current president here for USG. This is actually my first year involved with the program, but I've been extensively involved on campus in other leadership positions, as a resident assistant, an orientation leader, within OSLICE as a program assistant, and some other positions that I've represented, such as the Dean's Ambassador for the College of Science and Math. Won't get too much into it, but yeah, a couple of things that some experience on my end, but yeah.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Vice President Pereira.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaylee Pereira again, and I'm the Vice President of USG. This is also my first year, but not my first year being in student government. I was in it for 8 years, back in middle school and high school, and I've been involved over campus, similar to John Ray, with orientation, OSLICE, as a peer mentor, the College of Science and Math as a peer mentor and peer advisor, recreation, countless other things. And yeah, just happy to be here.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Chair Bates of Budget and Finance.
Hi everyone, I'm Jake. I'm the chair of Budget and Finance. I joined student government as a freshman. This is my third year. Last year I served as the liaison between faculty council and student government, and I'm doing that again this year. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all.
Thank you. And now we will go to Chair Goggin. I know she had some connectivity issues.
Hi everyone, Laura here. I started USG my freshman year. I came in as special election, served as a senator.
And then we will go to Chair Laboa Velasquez.
Is my Wi-Fi cutting out again?
Oh, no. Were you saying something before? Laura? Okay, we will go to Chair Velasquez and then hopefully we can connect again, Laura.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Isabella Laboa Velasquez. I am the chair of CCA. I joined USG my freshman year, so last year, during special elections. And since then, I've been serving in the Campus and Community Affairs Committee. I initially served as the event planner, and now I ran for chair last April, I think. Okay.
Thank you. Now we will go to Chief Justice Moylan.
Hey everybody, my name's John Moylan. I'm the current Chief Justice. I joined USG last year as the Associate Justice, and I've been here this is going to be my second year in USG. My job is pretty much just to make sure everything is legal, everything follows the bylaws. I also record your votes when you vote on legislation, and then put that on the UMB.gov. So yeah.
So that is your steering committee. And then, of course, we have Shelby on the steering committee as well. And basically, the committee is there just to discuss things. And we usually meet after there's usually committee meetings every other Wednesday. And then we usually meet after the committee meetings, after the chairs are done with their committee meetings as a group. I don't know if Shelby wanted to say anything about the committee or anything like that.
About steering committee?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you said it all.
Okay, perfect. So now we will transition to the executive update, which President Javier and Vice President Pereira will give us a summary of what they've been working on throughout the summer. And I think they have a presentation for this, so I will stop sharing. And you guys should be able to start.
Thanks, Fareen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen? All right, perfect. What's again? Okay. All right. So executive update. Hello, everyone. Pretty much, we took some time to just sit down and reflect on all the work that we've done this past summer. We were pretty much thrown into these roles and just did our best to kind of step up as much as we can with the different issues that have come up, and where we wanted to connect with to just prepare as this semester starts. So we can get started with some old business, is pretty much things that we've done over the summer, and then we'll get into new business later that we'll have continuing into the semester, as well as what we plan, other plans that are starting up in the semester. So some people that we've met up with.
Oh, before you continue, I'll just say something. For those who have kind of been with us throughout the summer in various town halls and things, some things you might see as like repeated, but for those who are kind of just jumping into the senator role right now, you can definitely this is basically for everyone to get a grasp of what we've been working on, and if there's anything that interests you or that you've heard about or passionate about, please reach out to us. Yeah, it's just to let you all know what we've been working on and what we hope to see moving forward. Okay.
Yeah. So a couple of people that we've met up with campus services, specifically with Diane Dorigo, in terms of some of the issues going on around shuttle buses and whether or not they would be present on campus. I believe the decision was made to not have shuttle buses on campus. So now the conversation is how students who are still taking classes online are going to be able to access campus still, especially in the later months when the weather starts getting colder and things that make it more challenging to go from, if you're commuting from the train or parking at Bayside. We've also met with the My Brother's Keeper chapter, which is a new chapter at UMass Boston here that's starting up, initiated by Tony Johnson, I believe is his name. Or Tony Martin. And he had started this project in a light of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so we're working closely with him to help him kickstart that. I can throw it to Jaylee to say a couple of other people that we've met up with.
So we've recently met up with the Vote Coalition, which we're pushing for new voters, new people to be registered to vote, or for more voter engagement from people for the primaries that happened yesterday in Massachusetts, but also for the general election on November 3rd. So we're working with that Vote Coalition just to kind of do remote promotion in a sense and seeing what we can do in a remote world. We also met up with Global Programs at the beginning, in the middle of the summer, when legislation was passed by the government about international students. I would definitely recommend reading up on that if you have not, or if you hadn't heard about it. And we just made sure that those international students were safe, and what we can do moving forward for international students, especially with the large time gap due to time zones, and how we can promote more engagement from those students based on time zones, and having programs at kind of more convenient hours for them. We also met with the Respond program, so a couple of people from there, and they basically gave us a rundown of what the program is, what the program was in the spring, and what they're doing for the fall, and to keep pushing that program for students. If any of you have not have issues, but if you have any challenges or would like to speak to a peer coach specifically on your academics, that's what this Respond program is. I would definitely recommend reaching out to them or promoting them to your friends or peers. And John Ray, I'll throw it back to you.
Thanks. Last two people that we met up with, we've been meeting with Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Gail DeSabatino, as well as Dean of Students, John Silveria, weekly this past summer, just to touch base with them in terms of different changes that have been made at the university, and have been getting a lot of guidance from them in terms of what people to meet, so that we're updated as much as possible with different processes that happen. And then, of course, luckily we were able to squeeze in a meeting with Chancellor Suarez Orozco, and get to know his vision for the university, and just share some of our visions as well, in terms of student spaces, what the residence life looks like now and moving forward. Jaylee, I don't know if there was anything in that conversation as well that you wanted to add to.
From that conversation, we also talked about student spaces such as clubs and things like that, as well as having something I've been working on, which I'll speak on a little later, about possibly having a small student space on campus for students who are struggling at home with either unsafe living environments or other issues with Wi-Fi and things like that. So we spoke to him about that as well.
Jay, I don't know if you wanted to take on some of the sorry.
You can do the first two.
All right. So a couple of committees, boards, and coalitions that we've been meeting with for the past summer. First one is the Student Equity and Access Team. So originally their launch was this past semester in the spring. Unfortunately, that was thrown out the window due to COVID, but we've been working with them and encouraging them to kickstart again this upcoming semester. Although it will be in a virtual setting, we hope to actually have that again, that celebration of launch, hopefully when we return in the spring. And so with this specific team, they focus on current climate issues that are happening within the university, and addressing it with the help of the Office of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion. So for example, again, the Black Lives Matter movement, or immigration, ICE, things like that come up, we would tap into them and see any plans or any initiatives that they're thinking of putting out. The next one that we've been a part of, very passionately a part of this past summer, was the Dean of Students Student Staff Advisory Board. So recently there was an incident that had happened early on in the summer regarding a student that had had some racist remarks around social media, and a lot of students had created upset about the response of the university. And so we've been working with the Dean of Students and the people within this advisory board to try and figure out how can we make the process that students have to go through more transparent and understandable for students when things like this come up. And so we've done that through town halls. We've encouraged the Dean of Students to kind of communicate their processes a little bit better, and try and just show what the necessary steps are that every student must go through if they're going through the code of conduct policy. Jaylee.
So the last three, the Fall Planning Committee for Campus Life is a committee that I've gotten the chance to sit on, and that's the committee is basically trying to plan for the fall, remote or not, and looking at the decisions being made further on after the fall. So there's been a lot of talk from that committee about safety and what things can be done on campus and what cannot be done. So if you have anything, contact me for that. And that's also where I spoke about having a space on campus for students. That's still in the works, and we'll see if it gets approved. But we're looking not only in a physical sense, but in a remote sense, how we can also better the lives of students based on mental health, and looking at other aspects such as that. The ACTF, which is also known as the Academic Continuity Task Force, is another task force, and we've gotten the chance to sit on that and on the communication subcommittee. And a lot of the messaging you see in the weekly emails from the ACTF, we've gotten the chance to review and look at, and we'll talk about this in the new business, but there's some exciting things that we'd like to see, and the task force would also like to see moving forward after the beginning of the school year. And the last is the Police Community Advisory Board, and this sprung from the presence of state police on campus and the uproar and the disagreement with that. So two tasks of the Police Community Advisory Board, there's more than two actually, but this is a space for students to speak about their interactions with the police, what they would like to see from police moving forward, some questions about funding and things such as that. So that'll be a conversation and a board to hopefully see change moving forward with the interactions with police on campus.
All right. Apologies, I feel like I'm going a bit slow, so I'll try and make it quicker so that we're still on schedule. A couple of statements that we've released, and I'm sure y'all hopefully have seen it on the Instagram, was the Black Lives Matters statement that early on in the summer, Black and brown lives do matter, and we want to emphasize that. We wanted to emphasize that during the time, and even now, as we're entering this new semester, and as well as the Immigration's Custom Enforcement statement when there was a time when ICE had released some new legislation, as Jaylee had said, that may bar international students from staying in the country. And so, Jaylee, I'll pass it on to you.
And we also did 2 town halls throughout the summer. Thank you to those who joined and were able to join. We really appreciated having you all there. So our first was about the fall 2020 plan released by previous interim chancellor Newman. And that town hall was to get feedback and ask questions on the fall plan and hopefully change things. We did submit those suggestions to the chancellor before the final planning doc was sent out. And we also met with, had another town hall where the Dean of Students kind of took the first half of the town hall, and we asked feedback from students on what they knew about the Dean of Students and how much information they did know, as well as the Dean of Students introducing themselves. And we also had a section of the town hall where we talked about the fall semester, how students were feeling, and any questions or concerns they had that we could hopefully voice to administration. We'll go extremely quick because I'm sure y'all will be hearing from us again about this new business, but we did just kind of want to brief on what we're doing going into the semester, as well as some of the things we're hoping to do and plan out.
All right, real quickly, we'll be continuing to meet with Gail and John bi-weekly just to discuss, again, any more updates in what the current semester looks like, and then hopefully as much news as possible with what the spring semester will look like. And then the Vote Coalition and engaging students in voter turnout as the elections are coming up soon.
And then for the committees and boards we'll be on, so I will be continuing on the Fall Planning Committee. John Ray will be continuing on the Provost Search Committee throughout the semester and into January when we hopefully find a new provost. And then the Student Success Advisory Committee is what I had spoken a little bit about with the ACTF. We've kind of talked with them, and the faculty are hoping that we can kind of create this advisory committee on student success, and not just the academics success, but looking at other things such as the well-being and the development of students through that advisory committee, especially going into this remote modality in the fall.
All right, upcoming events and projects. So right now we're actually working with Bethany from Student Activities to launch one of USG's first semestral events, which is usually a tabling for a WOW, the Welcome Week. This time we've kind of scheduled it virtually on September 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. So please reach out to us if you're available at the time. We'd love to have you on the call and just welcome any interested students to joining USG. There's that.
And then we'll also, we're hoping to work with SEOC, Laura, and BNF, Jake, for a conversation. We wanted to frame it more as a conversation and less as a town hall with clubs and organizations to clarify the student activities fee and where other funds go, and just in general clarification for other students on the processes.
And lastly, cabinet positions. We finally finalized all the position descriptions and what kind of positions that we're looking for. And we'll go into more detail with that tomorrow. But keep an eye out for that. We'd love to, at this time, we'd love to tap into as many student leaders as we can to try and get voices out there within different administrator conversations and continuing to connect the community here at UMass Boston. I think that's it. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep, thank you so much. Perfect timing as well. So now we will transition into the trustee update, which is Kush. So Kush, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. So just quick raise of hands. You don't need to use the Zoom feature. You can just raise your hand physically if you are able to. How many of you guys know what the Board of Trustees is, / what they do, also / what the student trustee does? If you don't know, that's perfectly fine. Just want to kind of gauge the audience here. Okay, cool. So just a brief overview of what the Board of Trustees and what their charge is. So the Board of Trustees is the governing body for the entire UMass system. So all of our 5 campuses, they make decisions regarding academic affairs, tuition, Title IX enforcement. There's the UMass Building Authority. So all of the buildings that are on our campus, on the other campuses, it goes through the building authority. Anything that's getting built, renovated, whatever, they're the committee that works on in that process. And also within the Board of Trustees, there's a handful of committees. There's the Administration and Finance Committee. There's the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs, and there's the Advancement Committee and the Audit Committee. I sit on the first 3, so A&F, CASA, and Advancement. And so as student trustee, what I do is I represent the undergraduate and graduate students of UMass Boston to the Board of Trustees. I'm bringing that perspective of all of our students. You know, students come from so many different backgrounds, and you've all seen that, and we've seen and kind of heard different stories from different students on how they've experienced, and what they've experienced on campus. So it's my job, it's my duty to bring those concerns up when we have different conversations. And so that's my main charge. And, I meet regularly with different staff members in the president's office. The other trustees and I had a meeting earlier today with President Meehan. A few weeks ago, I had a meeting with our previous interim chancellor, Newman, who is now the system chancellor for academic affairs for the entire UMass system. So she's what her new position is, that she works in conjunction with the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. And she does that as a full-time job within the president's office. So a few things that I've kind of been working on for the board. We've had a very interesting summer. Obviously back in July, we had voted on the tuition and fees package and the overall budget for the system. Across the board, undergraduate and graduate tuition did not increase. Fees were a little bit different per campus. Technology fee had increased. And then our campus, obviously, from the referendum question from last year, was an increase in the student activities fee. So those fees were dependent on each campus, and those increased as whatever the campus had done. But tuition across the board did not increase for in-state and out-of-state undergrad and graduate students. And that was something really important that the other student trustees we conveyed to the to the staff members in the president's office, to the admin and finance committee, and I'm happy that it went this way because they realized that increasing tuition in this time of uncertainty for many students who are coming from different backgrounds is just not feasible. It's not something that they can take on, and this is also a lot of other universities have increased their tuition, and they did that for whatever reason, but for us it was even a better decision, but also it takes a little bit more of a financial hit for us because we haven't received as much funding from the state legislature as we would like. Obviously, if you have been following some of that, we're working on a 1/12 budget, so every month is a budget that's coming out, so we don't have a full budget right now, which is the unfortunate part. And so the president's office, the admin finance team, they've been really working hard on seeing what our projections are going to be like from previous recessions and how they have planned for that. They're thinking and seeing right now that UMass won't be able to recover for 2 to 3 years post when we kind of get back to a normal, and especially with this kind of recession that's going on, and that will follow with. And so they're trying to do as much as they can where they rearrange money where they can make sure that our students, our programs are still intact as much as possible. So that's kind of something that they're working on constantly and that they're updating us. In our meeting today with President Meehan, we talked about a little bit of the financial situation right now. Usually every month or 2 months, we kind of get a quick update on the financial situation. We're going to have a meeting with the Vice President of Admin Finance. So her name's Lisa Khaleesi. So the other student trustees and I are going to have a meeting with her. Our financial situation isn't pretty, but we're in a relatively better spot than most other universities and colleges that were hit very similar to us. And so the charge that's been given from the president's office is that all of the campuses work on a 0% operating margin. Before in the past, it's working with a 2% operating margin, but it's gone to a 0% given with what we have right now. And that's kind of it, really. So we're working diligently with members of the president's office. We're working with all of the different students. My job is really to reach out to you guys and for you guys to also let me know what are some things that you're facing, some things that you're hearing from your peers and from other students, probably some of your classes when they start up. Some of the conversations might just naturally kick in about the situation of our campus. So any conversations you guys are hearing that you guys are part of, anything that kind of relates to my job and how I can represent all of you guys better, please do let me know. Please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a meeting with you guys. I can explain any confusion, any questions you might have about how UMass Boston kind of works and how the system works, how, what our administrators do in a more of a, in a administrative role, working through the president's office and reporting to them. And then the other student trustees and I were in the background working on a few statements, kind of just thinking about how can we become a better, more cohesive voice as 5 trustees for our campus and for our system. So again, that's pretty much all I have for upcoming meetings. We're going to have a meeting on September 16th. I believe that's the date, and that's going to be a big financial update because that would be after ad drop period. So we'll have a better idea of what UMass is looking financially and where they're kind of making, where they're restructuring almost pretty much. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, if you guys ever need any help, need any assistance, then just, I'm always available. You can always just call me, text me, whatever. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Kush. Next, we're going to transition into the parliamentary procedures, and Chief Justice Moylan will go through this. And basically, if you guys have any questions regarding this, this is like the time to ask questions because parliamentary procedures is how our General Assembly is run. Committee meetings tend to be more casual, but it depends on the chair if they want to run it with Robert's rule and stuff like that. But at this point, I will stop my screen share, and if John, if you want to bring up the presentation, that would be perfect.
All right, thank you, Corinne. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you all should have been sent videos on Robert's rules already. If not, please let me know. And if you have, but haven't been reviewed them yet, please do so as soon as you can, because this presentation is not a full guide. It's pretty much just a summary. So yeah, anyway, let's get right into it. So an overview of Robert's rules. So today we'll be discussing the types of motions, the steps to a motion, requesting points, procedure, and practice. But before we begin any of that, let me just explain what Robert's rules actually are. So they're pretty much just like a set of rules to allow you to run a meeting smoothly and efficiently. They're used throughout the federal and state government, as well as during GAs. Depending on your chair, they could also be used during your committee meetings. Some chairs decide not to use it in smaller groups. But yeah, so let's get into the specifics, starting with the types of motions. So there are a lot of types of motions, but the big one you got to know is main motions. And that's just bringing something before a group. So the main motion is like the big initial motion, and they require a second to proceed, as well as a vote to even discuss it. They can be discussed and can be amended, but the amendments can also be amended, and that it's just the big thing that's being discussed. Subsidiary motions are the smaller things. So this is if you want to postpone a vote, hasten a discussion, saying like I move to vote, or amend. It's just like a broad category. And to do this, you just say I move that the motion be blank. A specific type of subsidiary motion is amendments. An amendment is a very specific change to a main motion. So this could either add words or subtract words from the motion. So you could either change out a word, you could strike out a clause to a law, something like that. And then after discussion of the amendment, then you vote to apply the amendment to the motion, and then you have to continue discussing the motion with the amendment attached. Then there's a subsection of an amendment, which is an amendment to an amendment, where it's pretty much just the same thing, but saying, doing the same thing while discussing the amendment instead of the main motion. There are also motions called privileged motions, and these are motions that have nothing to do with the topic being discussed. They typically have to do with like adjournment or recessing, stuff like that. And the last big type of motion is rule suspension. So this is done if like for some reason the agenda is not right or something like that. It's really rare that the rules are just suspended in like a big GA. They could be suspended more often in a committee meeting. It really depends. So next are points. So points are really important. There are four main types of points. They're used to keep order, and you can interrupt anyone while requesting them. And they're just they're like the big things. So the first one is point of order. So if someone has either completely gone off the track and stopped using Robert's rules altogether without like voting to suspend them or something like that, or if someone has just flat out insulted you while discussing an emotion, you rise to a point of order. So this pretty much just says like, hey, get back to the Robert's rules, be polite, be respectful, stuff like that. The next is a point of information. So obviously you're not going to be expected to know every single topic discussed. That's like a lot to be expected of you guys. So if there's something like being discussed that that you don't understand, like if something like with biology is being discussed and you like aren't a bio major and haven't taken a bio class or something, if something like that, you just rise to a point of information, and then it pretty much just says, hey, can you explain what we're talking about? For example, the example I put up there, I'm not a poli-sci major. I had no idea what neorealism was until my friend like explained it to me like halfway through last year. So, for example, if that was being discussed, you would just rise to a point of information and ask your question. Next is point of privilege. And point of privilege is a point that has to do with either the comfort or the safety or something like that during the meeting. And it's mainly used for like a noise complaint. So like you would say like, I can't hear you, please speak up. Or it's really not noisy outside. Can you repeat that? Before you say any of that, you just say point of privilege. And then the last is point of parliamentary inquiry, which is if you're discussing a motion, but you don't know how to proceed because you forgot part of Robert's rules, that's completely fine. You just ask point of parliamentary inquiry and then ask your question. Similar to a point of information. And then there is the handling of the main motions. So the big thing is obtaining the floor. If you want to put out a main motion, the first thing you have to do is obtain the floor. And the main thing is raise your hand. The chair will call on you, and please do so when no one else is speaking. Don't interrupt anyone. Then next, you'll bring the motion before the assembly. This motion must be seconded for discussion, and then the chair will state the motion for the assembly. Then the motion will be debated by the senators. Once again, before debating, the senator must obtain the floor. And the debate can be closed in either one of two ways. Either if no one has taken the floor, the chair can just close it. Or if someone decides to move to a vote and 2/3 of the assembly decide to do so, then the debate will be closed that way. So voting is another type of motion. With this, the senator just says, I move to vote. It is seconded, and then the vote happens. All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. The default way that we do voting is normally by voice, so just aye and nay. Another way is we could go through each senator and say like, Senator Smith, aye or nay, and then they'd say aye or nay. Senator Jane Doe, aye or nay, and so on. And then after voting, the votes will be tallied. The speaker will announce the results of the voting. And then we, the judicial branch, will tally who voted what, and then we'll put that on UMB.gov. So that is the main thing. I also had videos, but in order to keep with the schedule, we'll skip those. And just some practice. What would you say if you want to bring this law before the Senate? Anyone? All right, well, you would motion to bring this to the Senate, they would second it, and then it would be discussed. In order to keep with time, I guess we'll skip this, like the big ones, and just go to the points of order. So for example, what would you say with this? Anyone? Anyone? All right, well, instead, I guess we'll just skip to the next topic. So thank you all.
Would you, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Is it point of order?
Not quite. Point of privilege. Sorry, John.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't see the chat, but actually, no. I'm sorry. You were right. It would be point of order. That's my bad. But yeah, point of order. Next is the speaker is talking, but there's too much noise and we cannot hear. What would you say?
Privilege. Sorry.
Point of privilege.
Yes. All right, and then lastly, if you feel like you wish to move to a vote, what would you say?
Motion, like moving to motion.
Yes.
Hey.
So you just motion to move to a vote. So anyway, thank you all for seeing my presentation and best of luck.
Thank you so much, John. So now we'll transition to legislation writing, and Chair my voice just cracked. Chair LaBoya Velasquez will do this presentation. So if you want to start sharing your screen, feel free to start.
Yep. Can you guys see my screen?
I cannot. Can anyone else see it?
No.
No. It's black.
There, let me try this again. What about now?
We still can't.
Mine, it looks like it's buffering.
Yeah. In that case, unless you changed anything, Isabella, I have the presentation. Oh, there we go. Now we can see it. Now we can see it.
I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Okay. So now that we've heard about parliamentary procedure and some explanation about Robert's rules, we're going to move into legislation writing, which is pretty much essential for student government, and is very important for us as senators to keep all of these things in mind. So this presentation, it's only on legislation writing. We can talk more about the future, about how to pass legislation, all of the procedures. And you will also see that as we move into the year, into the semester. So let's start. Okay. So, okay, so what is the legislation? So just like in government, legislations could be bills. In USG, they could be either resolutions or acts that call for the undergraduate student government to adopt a measure or to accomplish a specific goal. And these legislations have to be passed or approved by the student government. Okay, so we have three types of legislations. Legislations, as I said before, could be either resolutions or acts. A resolution is a non-binding resolutions on all members of the USG. And acts can be either committee acts or Senate act. A committee act is a binding resolution on all members of the originating committee, and only in those areas within the committee scope. A committee resolution is a non-binding resolution that must be within the scope of the originating committee's duties. This is very important to keep in mind, because senators, we can only, if we are going to write a committee act, we are only allowed to write a legislation that is within the committee, which is coming from, let's say you are a senator from SDOC. You are not allowed or shouldn't write a legislation that is only going to be on the scope of CCA and so forth. And a Senate Act is a binding resolution used solely for Senate business that doesn't require an enact of the USG. Senate acts may only be used for the purpose explicitly stated in these bylaws. Senate acts require only the approval of the Senate. Okay. So first steps. So yes, we know what a legislation is. We know that we as senators are kind of like responsible for writing legislations, but how do we actually start to write legislations? So one thing and one advice that I will give you is try not to just sit down, grab a piece of paper and then a pen and just like start writing resolution, because it usually doesn't happen that way. A legislation idea can come to you at any time. You can be in one of your classes, you can be having lunch with your friends, you can be at a GA or even at a committee meeting. The idea can just pop in your head and you can just like start building off of that. So first thing you gotta do is think of a topic. So it could be anything. If you see a situation that requires like immediate change, or you see something that, you know, I could write a legislation based on this, just go for it. And then the next thing you gotta do is you have to talk to your chair or other USG steering members, because we can help you. This step is very important in relation to the next step, which is research, research, and research. Us as chairs and members of the steering committee, we can help you building some numbers, some of the things that you will have to keep in mind when you start writing legislation. And research is important in writing a legislation because legislations should be ideally as specific as possible. Some legislations require numbers, require a budget, require all of these different things. So you want to make sure before passing that legislation into committee or into GA, you want to make sure you have all of the information listed so it is easier to understand and to vote on it. And get additional student input. If your legislation it's not a committee act or it's not a Senate act, then your legislation will have to consider additional student input. See how your fellow students feel about this legislation. How is this going to affect them? How is this going to benefit them? And you also have to keep in mind the reactions of other organizations and administration. So next we have the power of the committees. Legislation should be ideally a collaborative effort. Get the support of your committee. This doesn't mean that you have to write a legislation all together. You can write your legislation by yourself, but you want to make sure you let your committee know, you let your chair know, so there's a discussion, bouncing up new ideas and suggestions so your legislation gets as better as possible. So next we have formality is key. Writing a legislation for USG requires a proper language depending on the type of legislation. So for resolutions and legislations as a whole, we will say be it an act. And then if you're writing an act, you will also mention it is petitions. And legislation, no matter if they are acts or legislations or resolutions, they will always end with be resolved and then the following sentence. So these are the labels of legislation. I'm gonna try to annotate. Let's see how that goes. Okay. So the X, the red X we have right here is for the label of the originating body committee. So let's say you are a senator from BNF, then this legislation instead of X will have a B. Then the A, it's for the type of legislation. If you're going to write a legislation that it's only going to affect your committee, then that will be a committee legislation. Let's say C. Then we have resolution. Let's remember it could be either an act or a resolution. And let's just say for the sake of this example, it's a committee act. Then we have little a. Then this for Ys are for the four-digit year. In this case, it's still 2020. So let's just say 2020. The T is for the term. So S will be for spring, U for summer, F for fall, W for winter. In this case, it will be for the fall semester. So we will just say F. And then these three little N's right here, they will be for the number of legislation depending on the term it's being passed or written. So let's say we're writing a legislation for the fall semester, but this is the very first legislation we're writing, then that will be 001. And that's it. That's the labels of a legislation. Just clear this. Okay. So the whereas are the reasons for writing that legislation. So here in this section of a legislation, you will just list all of the reasons that you thought were the reasons that call for a legislation to be writing. And this apply to both acts and legislation. So here we have an example of legislation that was written in 2019. We have the labels right at the bottom, and you see how this senator wrote all of the whereas or all of the reasons why this legislation should be passed or should be put into consideration. So next we have the rationale. So this section, it's the why, and it's a little bit different from the section we studied before because it's like the driving motor behind the legislation. It's the big why, like the big reason. So this in action will be under the whereas most of the times, and you will just say this legislation will accomplish this. This is what we have to do with. This is the big impact that this legislation is going to have. And for this, you will have to consider questions such as, what will this bill accomplish? What are the reasons you felt it was necessary to write this bill? How will this bill function to accomplish your aim? And you also would like to consider elements such as, why is it important for USG to adopt this measure? How is this issue currently being unaddressed? And so forth. So next we have background governance. This is the section inside of a legislation where you recite all of the other bylaws and all of other legislations that will support your own. And you have to list them in order as they appear in the bylaws, just to make it more organized, and ideally have at least 3 bylaws including the background governance. So this will usually go at the end of every legislation. When you write a legislation, you want to keep different bylaws that will support your own legislation. Let's say you're reading the bylaws that can be found on the UNB.gov website, and you say, oh, this will actually help my legislation. I think if senators read this part of this bylaw, then maybe they will vote in favor of this legislation. Again. So things to keep in mind when you're writing a legislation. So the first thing, this is from the bylaws, the first thing that you have to keep in mind is that acts or legislations of the USG may originate from any committee, but a committee may not pass legislation that is within the scope of another committee. If a committee passes a legislation of the USG, that legislation will be voted on by the steering committee. So once we pass a legislation as a steering committee, that legislation will go into a steering committee, they will vote on it. If steering decides that that legislation should not be, if it opposes that legislation can still go to GA, but it will appear as opposed. And then the next thing you have to keep in mind is that committee acts and committee resolutions need only a majority of vote of the committee to pass, unless a higher threshold is set for the specific act or resolution. The third thing you have to keep in mind is that legislation must be in compliance with the constitutions, bylaws, and previous acts of the USG. Even legislation that only partially conflicts with the existing acts, the constitution, or the bylaws are considered totally non-compliant. So these are the things that are important to keep in mind as if you unintentionally write a legislation that goes against only partially against the bylaws or against the USG constitution, then your legislation will be totally non-compliant, and there will be no option for us to vote until that legislation. So additional concerns, you want to make sure to explain passing conditions of the bill, for example, 2/3 of a vote. Okay, so now we're gonna try to practice writing a legislation. Let me just pull this up. Can you guys see this Word document?
Yep, we can.
Okay. So here, for example, we have a legislation. This is just the easy part. So you can get this template from your chair. So let's say you decide to join, when we go over committees tomorrow, when you decide to join SEOC, then the template, you can find it with your chair. For example, I have here the Office of the Campus and Community Affairs Committee, and this is a Senate order. Now we have the labels. This is where you will write a legislation. So let's just do one example so you can see how you will actually write a legislation. So let's say we are the committee of CCA, and this is going to be a committee legislation, right? I think it's C, and it's going to be an act. Then the year right here will be 2020, fall semester, oops, 001. Okay, here you see it presented by, then your name, let's just say Senator X, and then you just leave like that. To the Honorable Senator of the Undergraduate Student Government of the University of Massachusetts Boston Assembled. This is just another part of legislation right here. Well, this letters are, and then this is where you will actually write your legislation. This is where you will explain your legislation. Let's say you want to write a legislation trying to bring the shuttle buses back. Then this is where you will do it. Again, your name, and this is a petition of, you will put the labels back again right here in this section, which is at the end of the page, the bottom. And then this is the section that we explained before, the whereas. This is where you list all of the legislation, all of the reasons for the legislation. You can put up the rationale right under here. One other thing you should keep in mind when writing legislation is, let's say, for example, it's a resolution. You can see right here, be an act by the Undergraduate Student Government Assembled and by the authority of the same to support the following statement. And if you're writing an act, remember you always have to have this be it petition. So you're almost done. Next thing you gotta do is be it resolved. This is where you will end, how you will end any legislation, and then you will list that the Undergraduate Student Government of the University of Massachusetts, Boston votes in majority on behalf of the undergraduate student body to approve, and then the statement of your specific legislation. And then for another page, you will just do the background governments, stating all of the bylaws or other USG legislation that has been passed in the past, so your legislation can be as effective as possible. And then that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And of course, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you can always email us or feel free to ask them right now. But this is perfect timing and we will transition in. We only have 15 minutes left, so I will wrap this up.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a couple of things that needs to be changed. So when could I work on it?
Yeah, so do you have a couple legislation ideas? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you'll do is first, like tomorrow we have the committee presentations, so you choose the committee, and depending on what the legislation is, if it's like based on what it is, it'll go through whatever committee, and you can always contact me or Isabella regarding legislation writing or anyone in steering, because we are pretty good with that, and we can help you go through it. So if you want, you can like brainstorm those ideas, bring them up to your committee first. The first committee meeting is next week, and brainstorm them, work around it, and then you can like choose a mentor to work on with the legislation, and you can write it together. Because at first, legislation writing seems pretty daunting, but like once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy.
Like I see the petition. I've been doing a lot of petitions that's similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Not kind of like a petition, depending. It's it has a very specific format that you have to write it in, and it has to be feasible. And sometimes, like if you put it through and it goes to steering, like we could like send it back to committee or something like that. But it has a very specific format that you have to follow, and but like of course it'll start with an idea, and you can obviously ask someone to write it with you, and you can go from there.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Not a question, but Farine, did you mention ex officio members when you introduced like student government in general? I didn't know if that was talked about.
So those are the members that if you're like in another campus organization, you can be like an ex officio member that you can like represent the interests of that organization as in USG, basically. So that's another option for senators who are highly involved. If you're in another campus organization, you can bring the concerns of that campus organization to the USG. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, could I get a question? Not just for the lecture, like because of the COVID-19, the undergraduate government, student government should be remote or in the campus. And if we do the remote job, and how to do that? Just use Zoom or others? Thank you.
Yeah. So was your question about the remote?
Yes, in the COVID-19, because of the COVID-19, the campus is all closed.
Yeah. So, but even though like the campus is basically closed, what we will still do is we'll still be running steering meetings, committee meetings, and general assembly meetings, just as we would in person. The only difference would be we'd just be over Zoom. Some committees might change. I know campus and community affairs is more so geared towards social media because of the change, and like they don't table anymore and stuff like that, but we will still be like functioning pretty heavily.
So Ivy works for the remote in the student government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It'll be all remote. Any other questions?
I have one. I was wondering, Isabella, if that slide that showed like the template with the XAZ where everything goes for the legislation number, if it was possible to send that to us for those of us who haven't done that before, just so we have an easy cheat sheet to refer to.
Yeah, we will send out the presentation at the end of this meeting.
Yep, there'll be an email going out, so I'll attach Isabella's presentation to that. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I have one more thing. Sorry.
I just wanted to go off of Carter's point. I think although we all will be working remotely, I think we definitely encourage and empower y'all to still be active within USG, whether that's writing new legislation or getting connected with different students and staff on campus. I think now more than ever, trying to see what the needs are for the community. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Any other questions? Of course, like if you don't want to ask us right now, you can always email us, or if you have us on, like literally just ask us anytime. I can attach like our numbers and stuff like that if you have any questions. I know it seems like this seems a little overwhelming, but it's a lot of information. But like once you get into the groove of it, it's pretty easy. It's like pretty easy to roll with. So
something, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So I'm a vice president of my Phenom, like the organization, and I'd be on the board meeting and just having conversation. So we all working hard to do the reopening, but what about if we have to like reclose? Like, is there any plan that we should have to be prepared? Because last time they was not prepared. Like I said, last time we was in school, I had my meeting. And then I went to the students, the deans, and they said that the teacher wasn't supposed to tell us nothing, but they did, and it was supposed to be a secret. I feel like the students needs to know it. They shouldn't be hearing it from the media.
Yeah, I think, do you want me to take that one?
Sure, go ahead.
So are you saying what happens if because we do have about 15 or so classes that are taking place on campus, some of the labs and things like that. Are you saying what happens if those have to close?
So just in case for everybody, especially that's going in school, like if something happens, if the coronavirus keeps coming, it will attack. We don't know when, right? Yeah. So do we have a plan for the reclosing? Because my executive director mentioned that like do the schools have a reclosing plan?
Sure. Well, UMass Boston, given that we are, I would say, about 95% remote, that's not something that we have to worry about as much. But should something occur that closes down the classes that do exist on campus, I can tell you there's absolutely a plan this time around. People have spent a ton of time this summer looking at all different plans and things like that and options, and trying to pour some time and energy into creating a better quality remote experience for the students in their in your classes, and all of that. And I think we have a new chancellor who really values transparency, as does the university. So I think that what happened, some of your concerns from last semester, I would hope would be not the same at all. So I think that everybody spent a long, long time figuring that out the past 3 or 4 months over the summer break, and I don't think those fears would be founded. So I feel like we're in a good space in case something like that happens.
Yeah, and then I also met the chancellor to the anti-racist meeting that we had with the African studies. And to me, my more worries is the layoffs and cuts of teachers. And And like I remember being in my meeting before last semester, and a student said, "Oh, they're cutting off our advisor. I might have to change. I have to change schools to change my major." We need to not let that happen, you know. And then I just want to know about testing for those students that will be on campus, because most places are doing like they went from 5 days to 3 days testing. So I don't know.
Yeah, if you're a student that's going to be on campus, I know, John Ray is physically on campus now. He's in the residence hall. A few of you will be going on campus for classes. You'll be contacted directly as to what the testing is. I know I'm helping with move-in for the few students tomorrow, so I went on Monday and got my test, and it was pretty well organized and simple. So I will say that if that is something that impacts you, you will definitely be directly told how to be tested and when to be tested. But it would really just be for the students coming onto campus. So if you're just fully remote, that's not something that would be required of you. But if you're coming on campus, you should know
I'm
by
talking
now.
on behalf of the students, because I work for the students. So
yep, absolutely.
So like,
mm-hmm.
And then I work for my job is with faculty, staff, and students, and like I said, layoffs.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing I really don't want to happen, especially with ISIS, because their livelihood is affected, because people gotta pay rent.
I'll say we're in a much better place than some of our peers on, you've seen the news with Amherst and some of our other colleagues. Thankfully, we made the decision early to go this route. And I think that has helped us in that we knew what we were doing. We were pretty confident in it, and we were able to work with students to get them back and faculty and things like that. So I can completely understand, because it's in the news all the time consistently, and it's very concerning for so many different reasons for everybody on this call who's dealing with families and friends and folks who are losing jobs and things like that. So I'm happy to talk with you offline. Any questions you have, just reach right out to me, and I'll make time to have a Zoom with you or whatever would work for you or for anybody.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, guys.
No worries.
No, you're perfectly okay. One thing that I really wanted to get in this session is a lot of engaged senators, so like this is making me happy. So don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. But unless there are any other questions, could you raise your hand if you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Jilly.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to add a few things that I've kind of learned the past couple weeks, month. So the classes that are on campus, there's only one class that is, I believe, weekly. Again, they're mostly all labs, but that is an upper level chemistry course that most likely only chemistry majors would be taking. And all other courses are a few times a semester. So it's very easy to kind of go back into that remote modality if need be for those students. And another thing about the testing, so there's also kind of like a satellite testing clinic in the Clark Athletic Center in the ice rink, if y'all know where that is. And that will be there for all students. They do ask that you call ahead of time and just say that you think you want to get tested, and they'll ask you some questions, and then you're able to go in if need be for that testing. So the University Health Services, definitely give them a call if you want to get tested. They're really trying to help students out where they can with that. And that will also be available for students who are on the campus as well.
All right, thank you. Unless there are any other questions, I'm gonna transition to the closing remarks. And like one more thing, I just have one more slide for you guys that I will share right now. It's a pretty quick, but everyone can see that, right? Yeah, cool.
Yep.
So here's what a typical week for you would look like. I know this is like a lot of information, but the base thing is like you're expected to do 3 hours a week, and that's not like checked or anything. So it's not like we're gonna be on you like did you do your 3 hours or stuff like that. But it's just to give you a basic idea of the commitment you have, and you should be active in General Assembly and committee meetings. You're gonna hear that a lot. Committee meetings, again, are basically when you meet with your chair and other senators who are in the same committee, and General Assembly is when the USG as a whole meets and we do our reports. Consistently brainstorm legislation ideas, stuff like that. And here is a typical week. So on Monday, maybe you could talk to your constituents. I've really emphasized that because you are representatives of the student body, so it's important to talk to the students. And Tuesday, you could brainstorm legislation. This is just like a pretty active week in USG as a senator. What it would look like, obviously you have class commitments and stuff like that, so if you don't do it, like, that's perfectly fine. Like I mentioned, no one's going to check to see, like, no one's going to be tallying your hours or your minutes and stuff like that, but the commitment idea is that you are giving USG 3 hours a week as a senator. Wednesdays are the days. Every Wednesday, every other Wednesday, you will have General Assembly, and every other Wednesday you'll have committee meetings. So each Wednesday at 3 p.m., it's either a General Assembly meeting or a committee meeting. Be active in those roles, especially in your committee meeting. That's like General Assemblies at first might seem a little daunting, but you can start to be active in your committee meetings. Thursday, you will do, so one thing that I want to do as speaker is send out senator tasks. I will probably mention that your first senator task will be to, like, review this session and tell me what I could have done better, what we could have added, what could have gone wrong. Like, basically review this whole senator training session because this is the first time we've done it. So like you could work on that on 1 day a week. And then, of course, one thing that I forgot to mention is you usually have a senator project that you have your whole like debate, you have like a whole, like, the entire academic year to work on. And the senator project can be anything, and it can be a goal. You can write down a goal. I know for like when I was chair of CCA, my goal is to get like 1,000 signatures on a petition, or not a petition, but like on what are they called? Like survey, on a survey, sorry. So it can be small goals, but like that's basically your senator project, and I'm like your avenue to work on that. Any questions you have or what you want your senator project to be, just reach out to me or anybody else that you think could help you. But that is one thing that like you should, think of an idea for. So that's a typical week of what it would look like. And then again, thank you for coming. I'm really, really happy with the turnout. It shows a lot of dedication. Thank you to everyone who did the presentations today. This went really, really well, and I'm really happy with everything. Make sure to remember that we have a session tomorrow at the same time. And tomorrow is actually going to be much more packed than today because we have some bias trainings. We're kind of, we don't know if that's the name we want to call it yet, bias trainings and committee presentations. And tomorrow I would say is important to attend because it's important for you to know what committees you want to choose, and you will have like around probably the weekend to choose your committee, because the first committee meeting is next Wednesday, which is going to come up really fast. So unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about or any questions, I will open the floor. I mean, I'm not going to open the floor, acting like it's already General Assembly. But basically, I will leave the room open for any questions or comments or stuff like that. And this is also the time where if you think you absorbed everything, feel free to leave. Thank you to everyone. If anyone else wants to say anything else, feel free. But thank you so much, guys, for attending. And again, these sessions will be recorded. We'll send it out later to you, and I will attach the parliamentary procedures presentation and the legislation writing presentation to you guys. Okay. Yeah.
Peace.
Have a great evening.
Thanks, Farine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job, Farine. I just want to say that. All of you did great.
Really well.
Oh, really well, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I'll stop the recording now.